The message that came out of the Gulf this Wednesday, April 8, 2026, was harsh. Iran tried to use the Strait of Hormuz as leverage, but ran into a heavy response from the United States and ended up giving ground at a point vital to the world's oil supply. What happened was a provisional 2-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran, brokered by Pakistan, after an American ultimatum to reopen the maritime passage in blunt terms. The route that the Iranian regime was trying to block became the center of military and diplomatic pressure that it couldn't sustain as it wanted. Who is in the middle of this dispute? On one side, Donald Trump, the Pentagon, and the United States military machine. On the other side, the Iranian regime, its armed forces, and its attempt to maintain control over the passage. In the middle, Israel, Pakistan as a mediator, and the global market, which reacted nervously because Hormuz is not just any stretch of water. It is one of the most sensitive points on the planet for energy. That is exactly why the crisis reached this scale. The problem wasn't just military, it was economic, strategic, and political. Iran knew that closing or choking off Hormuz would create a global shock and raise energy prices. The United States knew this too and decided to make reopening the route a central condition to prevent a new round of attacks. Trump announced that the United States will help deal with the ship congestion in the area, while Washington sold the agreement as a complete victory. In practice, the harshest interpretation for Tehran is simple. The regime realized it didn't have the strength to maintain a total blockade without paying an even higher price. Reports that circulated throughout the day reinforced this perception of maximum pressure. They indicated that bombers were already on the move and that the suspension of attacks would only come if there was an immediate and safe opening of the passage as part of a temporary truce. This detail is important because it shows how the negotiation took place. It wasn't a spontaneous gesture of peace, but a pause forced under a concrete threat. That's how this turnaround happened. First came the military pressure. Then came the deadline. Next, Pakistan stepped in to mediate, and only then did the promise of safe passage in Hormuz emerge. The reason for the Iranian resistance is also clear. Tehran wanted to turn the strait into a bargaining tool. Among the demands that became public, there was even the idea of charging $2 million per ship for passage. Something seen by analysts and governments as an attempt to formalize a kind of geopolitical toll on an essential route of world trade. This point became a symbol of the crisis. Iran was trying to get out from under the pressure by using Hormuz as leverage, while the United States was trying to break exactly that logic. When the dispute reached this level, the issue stopped being just a regional war and became an open battle for control over global flows. But the situation is still far from calm. Even with the announced truce, attacks and doubts continue to appear in the following hours. Associated Press and Reuters reported that the agreement is fragile, that there were still military actions in the region, and that not everything is peaceful, especially in Lebanon. Iran itself says it will approach the talks with caution and will keep its forces on alert. This shows that the ceasefire does not end the crisis. It only freezes an explosion that is still set to go off. The shock has lessened, but the fuse is still burning. The real impact can already be measured outside the battlefield. Maritime transport giants like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd have said they remain cautious about normalizing operations in the area. Hapag-Lloyd stated that a broader return to routine could take 6 to 8 weeks, while Reuters reported that there were about 1,000 ships stuck in the region and millions of barrels waiting to pass. This answers another central question. Where does this crisis really have an impact? Not only on the map of the Middle East, but in the ports, in the refineries, in fuel prices, in the wallets of people who couldn't even locate Hormuz on a map. Not even at the UN was there unity to apply more pressure. A resolution supported by 11 members of the Security Council to coordinate efforts to protect navigation in Hormuz was vetoed by Russia and China. This move showed that the dispute is not just between the United States and Iran. There is a bigger chessboard with powers trying to limit America's room for maneuver and preserve space for Hormuz and Iran. Still, the basic fact remains. The blockade became a global problem, the American reaction raised the temperature to the maximum, and the Iranian regime was pushed into a tactical retreat. In the end, the story that prevails today is this. Iran wanted to turn Hormuz into a weapon of blackmail, but on the other side it faced pressure that affected its room for maneuver. What happened was a temporary truce. The main players in this were the United States, Iran, Israel, and mediators from Pakistan. After weeks of war and growing threats, how? With an ultimatum, the risk of new attacks, crisis diplomacy, and pressure on shipping. And this time that Iranian gamble took a heavy blow.